Warriors, welcome to another episode where we are amplifying the wellness warrior within. We have an esteemed guest, sweet Karin, who is coming to us very globally. I'll let her fill you in on where she is in the world right now, but she has been everywhere. This woman has lived and held workshops in Singapore, in Hong Kong, in Bali, Greece, Australia, only to name a few. And she founded Nutritious N Delicious in 2011 after a corporate career in law and finance. And this was because she wanted to touch as many people as possible and, like us, help them amplify their wellness. She is a functional medicine nutritionist. She is trained in meditation and breath work. She's a fitness trainer. Wow, a mouthful for sure. And I say that in a really positive way. Also an author, wife, mama, and again, a founder. So I'm super excited to have her here today. We're going to get into a conversation that I believe every human and every warrior deserves to know. It's something that came across my awareness about 15 years ago, and I'm still learning. And we're going to talk about fluoride today. And what does fluoride mean for you, for your wellness? How can you protect your family? What does that look like? And before we jump in, Karin, I would love for you to say hello to our beautiful community and introduce and say anything that I may have missed about your beautiful experience in this wellness space. And also, let's jump into fluoride and tell them what it is today.
Thank you, Lindsaya, for having me. I'm always super humbled and grateful for being invited to share knowledge, and I'm passionate about it. So I'm very happy to be here today. I think, when we were talking before the podcast, it was more. We're going to speak about fluoride today, but it was more about awareness of what's in our food supply, of what are we putting in our body. I wasn't aware of these things, The only tweak I would do to the introduction that you gave me was that I got into functional medicine because I myself developed 2 autoimmune diseases. And
not to interrupt you, but do you mind sharing what those were in the event someone can relate and hear and see opportunity and possibility through your story too?
Yeah. So when I was about 18, I developed Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thyroid disease. At the time, no one really diagnosed me with it. I was just given some thyroid hormone, T4, and I was sent off on my way. Little did I know that if you don't really take care of an autoimmune disease, there's a very good chance of getting a second autoimmune disease. And further down the line, when I was 30, after I had my second baby, I actually developed celiac disease. I might have had it before, but it really erupted then. And I found myself in a situation where my health was in a really, really dark place. I suffered not only from the 2 autoimmune diseases, but many other things like chronic fatigue and really bad skin and really bad eczema and brain fog and a whole list of conditions. And that led me to try and help myself. That's why I left the corporate world. I left it because I was trying to help myself. I was trying to figure out. And in those days, there wasn't a lot of information out there. There wasn't like great podcasts like yours. There was no blogs even. There was nothing. There were a couple of health food shops and there was some books and there were naturopaths. And that's how I got into this. I started to read and to ask questions. And then I think the thing that struck me the most, and it correlated and coincided with the fact that I was also a young mom at the time, was that there's a whole lot of chemicals in our life, whether it's in the water, whether it's stuff that's sprayed on our food, whether it's medications, and whether it's chemicals in our products, right, in our personal care products that are toxic to us. And then I started to realize that these things accumulate in your body. And then I started to ask myself, well, do I really need this in my life? And I started to get rid of things. And granted, this was a long time ago. And I remember I had this conversation with my husband a lot of times. When my daughter was really, really small, I think she was like a year old, I chucked out all the toothpastes because I heard about this fluoride thing, right? And I was living in Australia at the time. And in Australia, there's fluoride in the water. So there's places there's no fluoride in the water, like some places in Europe, for example. And there are places where fluoride is in the central water, like in the United States, Australia, and, even places like Singapore and Hong Kong and stuff like that. And and he said to me, "What do you mean you're chucking out the toothpastes?" And I was like, "No, we're going for fluoride free toothpaste." And he was like, "No, but fluoride, you need it for your teeth. And if not, you're going to get, dental decay." And, we had been to the dentist, and the dentist was like, "Of course you need fluoride. Fluoride is like," and we had this fight, for on and off. I kept on throwing the toothpaste. He kept on bringing in fluoride toothpaste. We laugh at it now because he's completely converted, thank God. Um, and it was a big debate in our family. It created a lot of stress as well. I don't know if you experienced this when you come in with this like view, and a lot of people tell you you're crazy, or that, of course, the authorities, the doctors, the dentists, the government, they know what's best for you. And that's why there's fluoride in the water. When you start questioning this, it can be a very lonely place. It can be a place of like, people are wondering who you are. And that's how that was my story with fluoride, I guess, and now I would say my kids are teenagers. They've never actually had fluoride in their toothpaste. Neither have I for a good 15 or 16 years. And they don't have dental decay. They don't have fillings. Of course, it has to do with their diet as well, because diet is a big part of it. But I think the main thing people need to understand is that fluoride is not an essential nutrient, right? You don't need it. You don't need it. It's not essential. It also, no disease, including tooth decay, by the way, is caused by fluoride deficiency. So now the question is, why is there fluoride in the water?
Yeah. And I want to go back to a part where, for all of our listeners, because you may be the person in your home or in your community where you feel like you're on an island and everyone thinks you're crazy and, you're into all this new age or woo woo or crazy health stuff. And that was me. Karin, you said, I don't know if you've ever felt that way. My husband has come along for the journey and always been behind me. He isn't one that's doing the research, or he isn't finding the new information. And in the, we've been together nearly 20 years. In the beginning of our relationship, he was far more reluctant, really like would dig his heels in. Dairy, drinking milk was one of them. And again, I leave that to other people. I believe if you're going to drink dairy, organic and raw is really the way to go. And if you aren't consuming in that way, or if you're like me and have lactose issues, then it is important to consider. And so along our journey, there have been some things that he digs his heels in. And I wanted to give this bit of advice, unsolicited advice to our listeners of something that worked for me. And what I started saying, particularly to my family, is if you disagree, prove it to me. Like, prove to me why what I'm saying is wrong and what you're saying is right. And the most amazing thing is that they either, often people who aren't already looking don't care enough to put in the energy. So it's like, all right, well, then you haven't found an opposing reason, so you're going to come along with me. Or they go out, my children being, I have a 20-year-old and 14-year-old, or they go out seeking to prove you wrong and find out through enough research that you're accurate too. So I want you to jump in, because I know you were leading in to how fluoride isn't an essential nutrient for the body.
Yeah.
And yet it is, added. I live here in the United States. I know you live in Israel. I don't know what the water, I was going to say if it's in the water there too.
Yeah.
And so tell us a little bit more about why, you think this is, or whatever it is you were going to lead into to help us continue to understand fluoride.
I will say one thing about the research is that you've got to be very careful where you research, because a lot of the research today, in today's day and age, is curated, I would say. So if you just Google things, this happened during COVID. If you just Google, is fluoride good for me? You're going to get whatever country you live in wants you to know about that, which will probably be that fluoride is good for you. If you want to really understand if fluoride is good for you, you need to actually get into the proper research and the data and dig deeper. Lucky AI seems at the moment to be a little bit more inclusive of all kinds of different thoughts. So if you go on ChatGPT and you ask about fluoride, you're going to get a more holistic view of fluoride, which is great. I hope AI stays like that. We always get into fluoride talks when I speak to my patients about water filters. I mean, that's the main thing. I tell people 70% of your body is made of water. You should be drinking primarily water. And you have to be drinking very pure water if you want to take the first step to health. And that's usually where we start off. When people come to see me and we start working on whatever health issue they have, I start off with the water part. Like, what are you drinking? Are you drinking good quality water? What kind of water are you drinking? And that's how we get into the fluoride, conversation. And I'll just back up and say that the best quality water that you should be drinking, not only in terms of how clean it is, but also how alive it is, because water that's been sitting in bottles and it's been distilled, it's dead water. It has no energy in it. If you're drinking water that's running, whether through a tap or from a river, whatever, that's the best kind of water that you should be drinking. But in today's day and age, no matter where you're living, unless you're, I don't know, maybe in Switzerland on a mountain, you should be filtering your water really well. And the quality of the filters really matter. And you should be even checking, what is my water filter filtering? And today you can get this type of information. You can filter out heavy metals. You can filter out fluoride. You can, in our water, a lot of places are desalinating water. Here in Israel, we desalinate a lot of water. But many countries, by the way, desalinate now. And we know that a lot of the time in water, we not only find heavy metals and fluoride, we find residue medication. Like we can find birth control and chemotherapy in the water. Because people ingest it, they pee it out, it gets recycled. And so there is residue medication in our water and other toxic elements, which you definitely want to filter out. So if there's one thing that anyone takes from this conversation before we even started is filter your water, make sure that there's a very good, high quality charcoal filter, ideally a fluoride filter on your water as well. Who knows? Maybe in the States, your water will not have fluoride next year. Let's see.
Yeah, we have some opportunity to hope for that. The closest in my lifetime that I think we have come to that being a real thing. And I wanted to share this, and then I want to get directly into fluoride. And yet it hit me so strongly to make an analogy. And when you were talking about, how we get recycled prescriptions in our tap water and these medications that people are taking, an understanding of the concentration that we are seeing, that goes into the watershed that then is cleansed, but not purified. It isn't pure. It's simply cleansed of the most important things and or the highest version of technology of that water treatment center.
Yeah.
What we don't understand is the concentration of things. So an example, one patient going through chemotherapy, if they live on a septic, can actually completely destroy a septic tank based on the output of their urine and their feces into a septic field. And many don't know this. You shouldn't even share a toilet with someone who's going through chemo because we know that what goes in the body must come out. And so I want you to think about how many people in the geography that are sharing your watershed might be going through this kind of treatment. And so I wanted to give that visual to people because when you start to recognize how much of anything might be going into our water, even if it wasn't to directly address fluoride, which is typically for many an additional filter. At minimum, you want to be filtering your water for those other known toxins, and fluoride being one that's in addition. So I know my water filter it's reverse osmosis, and it has a carbon filter for the vast majority of things, and then it has its own independent filter, a secondary filter for fluoride specifically.
Yeah.
So
That's
it's necessary, right? It's necessary. And I'd love to do that for my whole house. The reality is I'm still bathing and washing my clothes in water that's not as pure or clean. So tell us a little bit more about fluoride specifically, because I know for us, when we changed our toothpaste, that was something my husband was like very sure was a bad thing. And then, that's where we kind of most know. And then also when I declined fluoride treatments for my kids at the dentist, He was like, are you sure you're doing the right thing for their teeth? And so tell us a bit more about fluoride, what it does to our body and all of the things.
It crosses the blood-brain barrier, which means it can get into the brain. And there have been several studies that have actually shown us that fluoride is associated with potential neurotoxicity. Specifically in children. Okay, so there are studies that can suggest that it can impair brain development and even lower IQ in small children. So the littler you are, the less your body is efficient at clearing out toxins. Your liver is just not strong enough to clear out toxins. And when you're exposed, when you're drinking a liter or two of water that's fluoridated, you are going to be, detoxing out differently than an adult. So that means that pregnant women and children are specifically, we need to look out for these type of people in our communities, because it can cross the blood-brain barrier.
And many women that aren't breastfeeding are using tap water to mix with formula to feed babies. So very important to consider.
They'll boil the water to kill off bacteria, but they're not filtering the water. This is a common misconception. A lot of people say, "Oh, I boil the water; it should be fine." No, that's not enough. Most of us live in Western countries where the water is safe for consumption, but not healthy for consumption. In the sense that you're not going to get sick, you're not going to get violently sick from drinking the water like you would maybe in a place like India or Indonesia or places like that, but it's not healthy water. The second thing that I'm worried about with fluoride is that it actually can really affect your thyroid. And as someone that has Hashimoto's, that was a big concern for me. So there's been some evidence to know that fluoride is an endocrine disruptor. It can affect your hormone. There's been studies to show that it can actually affect sexual development in children because it tends to accumulate in the body. But specifically, we know that it can affect the thyroid. And the thyroid is a little gland that sits, somewhere along your voice box here. So it's at the top of, your body, and anything kind of you drink, breathe, and eat goes through this root. And we know, just like smoking, by the way, affects the thyroid, fluoride and plastic as well, fluoride affects the thyroid really badly. And there's been a lot of evidence showing that it can affect how your thyroid produces these essential hormones. And so the thyroid is in charge of your metabolism, right? When your thyroid isn't working well, your TSH levels, your thyroid stimulating hormones, are probably going to go up. And we know that also it can start to bring down your T3 and your T4 levels, which is your actual thyroid hormone levels, which will eventually lead to hypothyroidism, to malfunctioning thyroid. It also kind of interferes with the body's ability to produce hormones with iodine. So it will affect the iodine balance in your body. So this is big. Right. And if we look at the amount, I don't know the specific statistics in the States, but I know that 1 in 4 women has a malfunctioning thyroid. That's a lot. That is a lot of women that are having, I'm not even speaking about the body and the weight. I'm just speaking about the energy. Like if you're tired, you're fatigued, you've got brain fog, you're not functioning properly. That's what you feel like when you have a slow functioning thyroid. And so just even understanding that these chemicals are in our water and affecting our thyroid, this is something that we can definitely take care of and do.
Yeah, absolutely. I have heard before, and I actually sent a reel to my daughter because she's 20. So she's at the age where if I send her something to watch from someone else, it's more likely to imprint in her brain than hearing it from me. And one of the things that it said this morning about fluoride specifically, which of course, God must have known we were having this podcast because I hadn't even said anything about it. And I saw that and it reiterated that the fluoride can also mimic and shift our iodine. However, we can continue to test, so we can be symptomatic for hypothyroidism or thyroid dysfunction and yet test normally. So it is important for us to also listen to our body, to go beyond the blood testing and to really look at the symptomology, I believe would be the right way of saying that. Like if we have some of those symptoms too, even if we don't have an official diagnosis, that is a red flag for you to pay attention and impart some of the wisdom that you're going to continue sharing with us around what we can do.
That's the essence of functional medicine. When we read the blood tests, we look for what's optimal, not what's normal. So just to give you an example, with specifically with thyroid, your TSH levels, your thyroid stimulating hormones have they have a balance. So that anywhere between 0.5 and in conventional medicine, it could be up to 10, depending where you live in the world. Okay. And so if you're in that range, you're considered normal. However, in functional medicine, we say the range is way smaller. The range is 0.5 to 2.5. And so you have to be in between that range if you want to feel optimal. We're speaking about these symptoms, right? The slow metabolism, constipation, weight gain, sluggish, brain fog, tired, memory issues. And so very often when we read the test, we need to look into that, and how we read the test really, really differs from conventional medicine. And you're right, you should always look into symptoms, not only the blood test, for everything, whatever you're doing. Symptoms are very important as well. But it's, and it's not only that, it's this accumulation in the thyroid. So the thyroid is a little bit like a sponge. Okay, the way it's built and the way it looks like biologically, it's like a little sponge, and it sits here, and it has an interesting job. I look at diseases not only from a physiological way, but also from a spiritual way. The job of the thyroid is to absorb, and anything that's toxic, the body is very smart, right? It doesn't want to let that toxicity into the body. So it stops it here in the thyroid. So if you're smoking, it stops the smoke, right? The lead and all the residue stuff that's in the cigarette. If you're drinking water with fluoride or from a plastic bottle and you have microplastics, it all gets stopped here in the thyroid. And then this becomes quite toxic. And two things can happen. One, you can develop nodules and then cancer, where the body just kind of like, or you can go into autoimmunity, which is very, very, very common, where the body starts attacking the white blood cells of the body, starts attacking the thyroid gland, and eventually they eat up the whole thyroid gland, which is what happened in my case. I barely have a thyroid left because for so many years I'd let that attack happen. I went to a great endocrinologist, and we stood one next to the other, and he had this little ultrasound machine. So he ultrasounded himself, and he showed me his thyroid, which it looks a little bit like a bow tie. It's beautiful. And he showed me mine. There was nothing. There was like few little lines left. That was it. My body had eaten up my whole thyroid by this autoimmune attack because I'd let it go for so many years because I didn't know better. Nobody told me, right? And so, any kind of toxins that you ingest are going to get stopped in this thyroid. But from a spiritual perspective, thyroid also represents a lot of things, like what you're saying or what you're not saying. Do you feel heard enough? Are you not saying what you think? There's a lot of different, that's why a lot of women actually suffer with hyperthyroidism and thyroid, issues. So it's just something to think about. The whole reason people or doctors or dentists or, the government has suggested to us to have fluoride is because they said it would be good for our teeth. So if it's good for our teeth, how come prolonged exposure to fluoride can actually lead to both dental and skeletal fluorosis, which means that your teeth and your skeleton get weakened and you get these white spots on your teeth. Okay, this is a very interesting phenomenon because if it's really good for your teeth, then why, if you take too much of it, does it actually do the reverse? A. And B, if it's so good for your teeth, then let's just put it on the teeth. Let's not just drink it up. You know what I mean? That's the question that needs to be asked. So when my clients ask me, do I need fluoride? My 100% answer is no, you don't need fluoride. You definitely don't need fluoride. You need to eat a good diet. You need to keep your dental hygiene. And that's a whole different podcast, that we can talk about. But you don't need fluoride in your water. There's more studies than less showing us that fluoride has toxic effects on the body. It accumulates. It can affect your hormones. It can definitely affect your brain. It can affect your thyroid. It can affect other nutrients like your iodine. There's some hypothesis around some research, about lead contamination and fluoride in the water as well. It's not something that we need in our water. Now, Who is more at risk for having more fluoride in their body? People that drink a lot of water, like athletes. They drink a lot. People that are outdoor a lot, that don't have access to good quality water filters and just fill up their water bottles, whatever, in public places. And then, of course, the younger you are and the lower body weight you have, then the smaller you are, then the more it accumulates in your body. So it's important to take note of this and to be aware of it and not to be alarmed. I think that's the most important thing. Like, I don't want to scare people. I think this is one of the easy ones to solve. Like, we can't solve pesticides and herbicides that easily, right? We can't solve air pollution that easily. But our water, yeah, we can. We can filter it. We can filter our water, and we can ask about good quality water filters. And there are great good quality water filters. And some of them are even quite, I would say, affordable. And they're even better for our planet. So, because you're using less plastic bottles. That's one thing I noticed when I was in the US, that a lot of people use plastic.
It is recommended. It's handed out at sporting events to children.
Yeah.
My kids have, they have weathered the neurotic mom syndrome, if you will, because I'm like, no, no plastic. We're not drinking plastic for a multitude of reasons. And it's very culturally acceptable here to drink from a plastic water bottle. And so you've given a couple of great ideas, and I know you're going to also give a gift to those that listen, so that they have some deeper resources for their expansion and their learning. And so 2 things that we've addressed here are water filters and then also toothpaste, because that's obviously another place that fluoride is coming in. I mentioned briefly the fluoride treatments at the dental office as well. Are there any other hidden spaces that people should be considering? And then do you want to tell people also what you're gifting them as an opportunity to keep learning?
Yeah, so I would say those are the main sources of fluoride. The big ones, right? Water, what you're drinking, what you're cooking with, what you're putting in your kettle, not just drinking, like what are you putting in your kettle for your tea and your coffee, what you're cooking with. This is, I cook with filtered water enters everything. And yeah, definitely the toothpaste, which again, there's tons of really good natural toothpaste now on the market that tastes great as well. That there weren't that many, 10, 20 years ago. There's tons now.
It used to be like chalk almost, like, it was.
So there's great. And I would really recommend, if you can, Google biological dentists. So there's dentists that are like functional medicine practitioners. They just call themselves biological dentists. These are dentists that are actually more open-minded and know more about natural dentistry. And that's a whole fascinating place. And if you're interested, I can introduce you to some of my amazing mentors in this dentistry world who have taught me so much. And what I want to share with people is my water guide, which really just walks you through the different types of water filters, what to look for in a water filter, how to then also maximize your water. Because if we filter the water, it's also important to remineralize the water, because we're taking out a lot of minerals, right? So we want our water to be very mineral rich. So how do we remineralize the water? And so just lots of tips around water, because I think it's probably the first and very basic and probably one of the most important steps one can take in their health journey.
Yeah, I agree. And it will benefit more than the addressing of fluoride, exposure, and it will address that too. So it is really all encompassing, because as we clean up our water, and it's something that we're consuming at the highest rate, we hope anyways, that of consumption, that's the thing we're consuming most regularly and likely and most often the highest volume. And so being able to, because again, we're brushing our teeth twice a day. And so although we want to shift to that, it's much different than what we're drinking all day. And so, water really does reign supreme. And I know our listeners will be so excited. Check the bio right down below here of this podcast, and you'll see a link. And you can also check it out on the website. We'll have it attached to this episode there too. Because if you are curious about how to evaluate your water, what to consider so that you have less fluoride exposure and you can truly help to heal or mitigate maybe even any symptoms. This isn't medical advice. This is my disclaimer right here. We talk about these topics to give you insight so that you can make better decisions, and then you can go to a trusted medical professional. I prefer to go to those that are in the naturopath and functional realm. However, you could go to anyone that you trust, and because they can all be insightful and get more information. And so is there anything you'd like to leave our listeners with? I know you said you really want to ensure we're not imparting fear. I love that you talked about the remineralization of water, because it's essential. We often think, we're going to clean it, and like anything else, we remove the good with the bad. So we want to put back in those key elements that are so nourishing to our body. Is there anything else you want to really remind people about fluoride as we close this episode? And we'll be so excited to have you back again.
I'd love to just wrap up and say, knowledge is power. That's why people are listening to this, to gain knowledge, because the more you know, the more you can help yourself, you can help your family. We have an innate wisdom in us. We know how to heal our own bodies. We just need the tools. We just need the knowledge. And for a very long time, we've subjected that knowledge to doctors, which I have nothing against doctors. My dad's a doctor. I love doctors, but we also can help ourselves. And we have this power. So, gaining power through knowledge is the best way that we can take hold of our health and elevate our health. And that's probably what I would love to add to kind of wrap up here. Don't be scared. And I love what you say. Choose, one thing. If it's just changing your toothpaste, that's amazing. If it's getting the water filter, that's amazing. If it's just being aware and buying that less plastic, that's also amazing. Any small change that you're making is a big change in the right direction. So don't be overwhelmed and start somewhere. That's the main thing.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It is all a journey, and we call it amplifying the wellness warrior within, because we know it's something that we do incrementally, and every action is a step in the direction of what it is we seek to see. So thank you so much, Karin, for coming forward and offering to pour into our beautiful community. And you are a wellness warrior too. So thank you for the work that you're doing, because we are all intrinsically, like you said, we are embedded with the wisdom. Often it comes with reprogramming. And so thank you for everyone who joined in here today to reprogram your brain, to create new neural pathways around new ideas, new information that can maintain your wellness and bring about wellness for years to come. And we want to say thank you to our warrior community for listening to yet another episode. We'll be excited to spend more time with you soon. And we've got some really fun things coming up. We are in our second day. So today is the release day of our full moon fast. So if you are going to join us for an upcoming month, we full moon fast every month right around the full moon. So check the website, come fast with us. It's a fast your way experience, which means you get to choose how you step into each individual month, whatever month you choose, or if you're going to join us all year, we'd love to have you too. And you get to stair step into what becomes your optimal fast. So you may begin by adding a juice or a smoothie all 3 days, and you may work your way up to fasting for 72 hours. And we're sending out some really great information for those that are participating today that talk about the benefit of fasting only 36 hours, and typically about, 16 of those are sleeping. So it's far less than we typically think we need to go without eating. And really powerful things happen to the body. So they would amplify as we're doing these beautiful things like cleansing our water. They help us in the modality of amplifying the wellness warrior within. So stay tuned. Come fast with us. We hope to see you. And Karin, again, well wishes and thank you. And thank you all. Have a magical day.